Hello, everyone. Welcome to Virginia's first ever Racial Truth and Reconciliation Week. You are attending the Give Us the Mic Partner and Advocate series. It's a pleasure for me to have Sophia Booker, a foster care advocate, here with me today. Sophia, could you go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone?
Yes, so I'm Sophia, and I guess I'll talk about what I'm currently doing right now. I am a student at VCU. I'm in the Masters of Social Work program, and my concentration is macro practice. I just chose yesterday, so I'm really excited about that. um, and I also work at United Methodist Family Services for a program called Project Life. And that program really focuses on permanent connections and also the successful transition to adulthood for youth in foster care, ages 14 to 23. And I am the youth development coordinator, so I do a lot of stuff as far as planning youth activities and just ensuring that youth have connections with our program. We do a lot of social media stuff as well, just to stay connected with them. Of course, because of the pandemic, we had to switch to virtual stuff. So we've been planning a lot of events as well. So I do a lot of work in that as well. Some of the work that I currently do is I'm on the state executive council for children's services. So I serve as the service representative for that. Really awesome opportunity. I was appointed by the governor to serve on that council. So I do that. And then I also have, I'm a facilitator for the Youth Move group here in Virginia. It's the only official local chapter in the whole entire state. And Youth Move, the move part stands for motivating others through voices of experience. And so that's a really cool youth group. There's a lot of youth who have different types of experiences within different types of systems, whether it's foster care, juvenile justice, residential, if they have experience with mental health, or if they have a family member who have experiences with mental health, they all just come together and share their experiences and use their experiences for a positive cause and change. So it's a really awesome group. We actually just won an award, a national award last year, so that's awesome as well. I could go on to say a lot, but it's kind of weird me
some of that
stuff.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining me today. I'm Chloe Edwards with Voices for Virginia's Children, and really the vision of this series is for organizations that have individuals impacted by their missions or working within their missions, for them to connect with those people to inform their work. Sophia, could you provide some insight about your connection to Voices for Virginia's Children?
Yes, so I actually can't remember how I got connected with you guys. I do remember distinctly how I actually wanted to intern with you guys, and there's conversations, and I was able to do an internship with you all. So I was obviously connected with you guys before I became an intern in various capacities, but it was truly an awesome experience to intern, to learn the ins and out of policy and the connections that were made during that time, and just seeing all of the processes of, you know, how bills become laws, and being at the General Assembly and experiencing those committee meetings and things like that. So that's how I really got connected with Voices. Mm-hmm. Awesome organization, if you guys don't know by now. But yeah, it's been great to connect with you guys, and I feel like I have long-term connections with you guys because I'm still connected.
Yes, we're going to stay connected too. Yep. And how you're even thinking of taking up policy or lobbying as kind of a specialty through the macro program for social work?
Yes. So I really when I was younger, I kind of just got involved with advocacy. I'm an outspoken person, so using my voice was something that was really important to me. I really enjoy uplifting voices of people who are often not heard. And I feel like I've always been passionate about that, even at a young age. And so I got involved with a lot of different opportunities, such as speaking engagements, work panels, committees, things like that. Kind of just fell into it.
Mm-hmm.
I never saw myself uh, getting as far as I am now, but now that I am is such an awesome experience, and I can see myself doing the work that you guys do, and just advocating on a system level for change to ensure that even the people who are giving direct practice to different um, clients, they're able to do that in the right way, because it'll trickle down by making decisions on the policy level.
Mm-hmm.
So I chose that track. I was really nervous about choosing. I don't like when I have to choose different tracks. So I was really like struggling with the decision, but I felt someone told me to follow my passion,
Mm-hmm.
and so I did. And so that helped me make my decision for that track for school.
Yeah, that's funny. Someone told me yesterday, lead with your heart, and that resonated with me as well. And I think that's what we do when we're guided by passion. So I'm sure you made the right decision for you. What inspires you to do the work that you are doing now?
So what inspired me is, as I mentioned earlier, just having a chance to raise voices of those who are often not heard. I know what it feels like not to have my voice heard. And so I've been in many situations when I felt like I wasn't being heard, even now. Like I always feel like that. And so I just have this passion for just uplifting people. And I think that keeps me going every day. And then just the work that I do on many levels, especially like working directly with the youth. Like as a person who was in the foster care system, that drives my passion as well, because I'm able to use my own experiences to, help a lot of youth who are in the foster care system have the same dreams and aspirations that I have. And so it's just, motivating them to know like, hey, you can reach your goals, you can reach your dreams, no matter what background you came from. If you have that determination and drive, you'll be able to reach your goals.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's something that really inspired me. And it's cool to like work with them, because I can see like I appreciate the little small moments I have with them. Like if they fill out an application for a job and then they get the job, like I'm like cheering them on so much. I'm like, yes, you did it. And they're like, it's not that serious. And I'm like, yes, it is. It's great. And so it's just seeing that, because I know what it felt like when I had those milestones and reaching my goals, and just to see them do that, that definitely keeps me going as well. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, tell us this. You mentioned frequently, you know what it feels like to not be seen or heard. Do you remember a specific experience that resonates with you, that you personally experienced or that you witnessed, that really sticks with you to drive what you're doing today and ensuring that people's voices get heard?
Yeah, I that's a hard question, because I feel like I can have a lot of different um experiences that I can share. I think one is school. I think I think sometimes when you have like those experiences, sometimes it may people may put limitations on you. Um and it's not in a bad way. It's kind of like, they want the best for you, and they want you to succeed. And sometimes I have to like push myself to say, like, I have to sometimes be more confident in my decision, because I know what's best for me. And so when I'm in those situations, I find myself I'm trying to understand the other side, but also making sure that that person is really hearing where I'm coming from and why I'm making the decision that I'm making. um And I've had conversations with people all the time about that. And so I remember distinctly this one time when I was in community college, and I had to take this placement test for like math and stuff like that. I was really upset because I don't test well, so I get really nervous. And I remember like feeling defeated because I didn't get past a certain point, and they told me that I had to stay there another year, and I said no, I'm not doing this. And so I ended up applying to VCU, and that was the only school I wanted to go to. Um, I was exposed to that school a lot by people in my support network. I worked there before I became a student there. It was just a good environment for me, and I loved the environment and the atmosphere. And I just applied, and I just hoped for the best, and I got in, and I was so happy. And I think that really changed the way that I looked at schooling, because I'm the type of person that I really struggled in school with grades and stuff like that. But after I made that decision to go to school at VCU and go into the social work program, like everything just went up for me. Like my grades, I was more determined. I was more comfortable with asking for help. And then I already had a support system there, and that was the biggest thing that I needed when I was at VCU. So, or I'm still there, and I still have a support system. But yeah, that was a good decision for me, and I felt grateful after that, because I was able to be confident in myself to make that decision for myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. Many times we experience situations where we're doubted, and sometimes it is intended to be in the best interest, but individually we have to make that decision to just move forward with our gut, or again, like you said, lead with our passion. So thank you for sharing. How does your lived experiences impact the work that you do or the way that you see the world in relation to foster care, or anything that you'd like to share?
So I believe my lived experiences give me a step up. I'm able to look through a very unique lens as a person who received services, and now just being on the other side as a professional, I'm able to use those experiences to meet the youth where they are. I think that's really important. And it's not to say that people without lived experience is not valuable, but it's just such a unique way to connect with the people who you are serving. In this case, I'm serving youth in foster care, and so I have a certain lens that I can look through, and I can meet them where they are, and be creative in how I interact with them and connect with them, to encourage them to do whatever their dreams and aspirations are. And so I think that's huge, like really impactful. And also it would be very helpful, like even in the macro world, to bring those lived experiences into that space, because oftentimes, like a lot of people who work in policy, like they don't see like the direct practice. They don't get the experience because they're on a different level. So for me, I'm able to kind of combine the two, integrate the two worlds together, to make the system better. I don't know if that's the best way of saying that, but I feel like it's valuable because I can bring those two worlds together with my experience in working with my lived experience, but also working directly with the youth, but also with my experience with advocacy as well. So I feel like I'm in a very unique place, and I'm really happy to be there.
Mm-hmm. And why is that important? Why is it important for people with lived experiences to be connected to organizations who specialize in a mission that would have impacted them, or to be connected to decision-making tables where decisions are being made on issues that would have likely impacted them, or others that are in similar predicaments?
I think it's important because we need that we really need that representation. Um, like if we have a ton of people who don't have lived experiences in these types of systems, are we really giving the best services to people who are receiving those services? I don't think so. And we just have to have that representation in every aspect of what we do. Representation is very important, not just to have representation, but to value that voice, to value that experience. Like, people who are already at the table should create room for others who are not at the table yet, and not just being at the table, right? Like, they have to value that seat just as much as them being at the table. And so that's why I think that's important, to have people of lived experiences. That creates more diversity, that creates, it reflects the world that we live in. And I really think that we should move towards doing that, because the world will be a better place. Everyone learns from everyone. Everyone's different. And so the more we hear about these different experiences and perspectives, from these different types of lens, the more we can have a holistic perspective on how we can better serve the community and make the world a better place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's pick that apart a little bit, because I think what's really special about this conversation is you have foster care experience, I have kinship care experience, and living with my grandparents at the age of 14. And outside of you being involved with a court-appointed special advocate, outside of that, I don't think my experiences were ever asked what my experiences were until I was invited to my first advocacy day. Could you describe the feeling, well, the process of preparing for an advocacy day, but what it felt like to be there and directly communicate to public officials about your experiences?
Yeah, advocacy day was really awesome, and it really gave an opportunity for a lot of youth who were in foster care, who were currently in foster care, and even foster care alum, to be there in that space. I think as citizens, we're not often in those spaces. And so it was a powerful thing to like help plan that event, inform the youth on, the different types of legislative branches that we have, as far as like legislative branch and the judicial branch, things like that. And just going through that whole process of them learning, like, how does a bill become a law? Like, who writes the bills and things like that. And then them like actually being in the space to experience that, to talk directly with legislators, policymakers. I think it was just a powerful moment. And for me to be in that space as well, as a young leader, and just helping them through that process of how to talk to legislators or how to set up meetings with them, it was just a powerful experience. And I wish that we can have that more often, because the policymakers, the people who are higher at the table, they get to see, the people who they are impacting by their decisions that they're making at that level. And it kind of just brings I think having that experience hopefully it will ground them or it does ground them, because they can actually see like, oh, this person was influenced by the Fostering Futures bill or program, and this person is now in college and going to school, and they're working, and maybe they bought a house, things like that. Like, their decisions impact young people, and to see that in person, to see that representation at that level, I felt like was very powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, advocacy days are definitely exciting. And I mean, even for individuals who may have been involved in foster care that may have immigrated here or came here as a refugee, just ensuring we're reaching out to all different kinds of populations, because foster care is so diverse in that way, and we have to have those perspectives. So, I mean, you've advocated for a lot of different policy in your tenure as an advocate now, because you definitely have gained a lot of experience over the years. What change would you like to see in the world as we move forward and having conversations about racial equity, even about the impact of COVID-19 on the foster care community? as well as what's resurfaced with Black Lives Matter now catching mainstream attention.
Yeah, this conversation has been very impactful. I've been having conversations with people all the time about, what's going on in our world right now. And, one of the things that I would like to see is for people to really, start having these hard conversations. I always see, like, right now we're seeing a lot of things on um, statements, people releasing statements, uh, removing monuments, and changing names to schools, things like that. That stuff is good, progress in the right direction. But for me, I would want to see more of foundational work. So that looks like, really being willing to have these hard conversations and talk about what we're not talking about. And even question why we haven't been talking about these things for so long. Like, why did we accept the world as it is now for so long? Like, I feel like it took a pandemic for us to just be shaken up and say, oh, this stuff is not right. This stuff should not be happening. And, people for a long time knew that this stuff shouldn't be happening. Like, we shouldn't have, it's so many different things, like, as far as like people in the workplace, natural hair, like that's still a thing, which is beyond me. Like, it grows out of our head. Like, why is that not deemed professional? Or it's just so many different things I can give examples of, but and we're in 2020 and that stuff should not be happening. And so we really have to ask ourselves, why do we accept the world as it is for so long? And then also just, really start having these conversations on different levels, as individuals, families, communities, even organizations. We really have to, face reality, face the history, and learn from the history, learn from the stories and experiences that you will gain from those conversations, and move towards action. I don't believe in having just a conversation just to have a conversation. Like, we have to have a conversation, and after you hear information from those conversations, what are you going to do with that information afterwards? And so that's always been my thought process when it comes down to racial equity, and change. We have to have action. Like, to me, silence in the face of injustice is unacceptable. So we can't be silent anymore. We can't be in our own little comfort zones anymore. We have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And if we're not uncomfortable, then change is not happening. And I just really feel like that we should have that. And this conversation needs to be had on every level, like in every different system, not just foster care, but also, like, obviously the criminal justice system, mental health, healthcare system, all of these systems that we have in place. Racism is deeply embedded in these systems. Whether we want to think about it or not, or whether we are aware of it or not, it's there because it's deeply rooted, it's embedded, and it's embedded so much that sometimes we can't see it, or certain people can't see it. And so it's just, we just have to be real and have the conversations. And it doesn't have to be negative conversations. Like, we're trying to move towards positive change. So yes, it may feel uncomfortable, but the conversation has to be had, because if not, then we're not moving in the right direction. So that's how I feel about it. I just feel like that's the foundational work first. Like, we have to talk about implicit bias. We have to talk about oppressive actions and behaviors that we're doing as individuals, as communities, even as organizations. Like, what practices are oppressive in our system? What practices are we using to contribute to oppression? within the foster care system, within the mental health system, within the health system, just all of these systems that we have, like what are we doing and how can we move towards positive change?
Mm-hmm. Well said. Now, we've definitely talked about racism across systems for racial truth and reconciliation. We've talked about mental health. We've talked about food insecurity. We've talked about, the impact of racism in COVID-19. So I do want to shout out my colleague, Allison Gilbruth, who just, I'm just speechless. She had a community chat on racism in the foster care system. Where do we go from here? And it was nationally attended, calling attention to how racism perpetuates itself in the foster care system. And it's not a presentation I've ever heard before here in Virginia particularly, but perhaps others have. What do you hope for foster care in the future? When looking at the way at which racism has impacted some of the outcomes for children of color?
I hope that, honestly, I hope that we get to a place in which we're looking through a racial lens, a racial equity lens, and not just like as a side thing, like an extra step, but really have that embedded in our practice. We talk all the time about, there's like so many statistics as far as like African American kids, and they stay longer in foster care than other kids, and or even they may get taken away from their families more often than another child would be taken away from their families. And that's just in statistics, right? So that's not something that is made up, that's actually happening. Or we talk about like psychotropic medications, like who are getting medication more than others. It's so many different things. And I think the issue for me, or maybe not an issue, but like a challenge, is that sometimes in foster care, which a lot of people mean well, is like they just look at the youth. What can we do best for the youth? It's like an overarching thing, and like you can't meet the needs of everybody the same way. And so for me, I would love to see more efforts and initiatives on how to look through a racial lens more, because everyone's different culturally. I always give the example of, let's say we have a white family who takes in a black child. That's great, like that's awesome and all, but then like, are we educating those foster parents on how to meet the needs of that child culturally? If you have a child who have natural hair, like are you giving them resources for how to do their hair, how to take care of their hair, things like that? Like, are we having these conversations within the system? And I don't think that we are. And I think it's just because it just wasn't thought of, because we're not looking through that racial equity lens. And so how can we address those issues? How can we be more intentional about our practices when we're looking through a race equity lens? And I think that's what I would like to see more efforts in doing. And it just goes back to what I said. We have to be intentional on having these conversations, because we know what we know. And so some people work through that lens, they work through that perspective, but we have to sit down and just have the conversations. And the conversations is to learn more, to learn about what's going on, so we can develop better practices. So that's what I would hope to see in the foster care system, because if we have better practices, then we will have better outcomes. And that's what I hope.
Now explain authenticity in that context, because we don't want people reaching out to youth in foster care, starting conversations with them with no goals in mind to hear or listen to them. What would authenticity look like in that context?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. I think the authentic motives and drives would be, not just saying, hey, we need a youth to come to the table, right? Or we need this person to share their experience about XYZ. No, like they need to have like a really valuable seat at the table. That means that if an adult is at the table and everyone's valuing that adult's perspective and their thoughts and ideas, the youth should have that same amount of value, because in essence, they, even though they're young, that doesn't mean they don't know what's best for them. And I always talk about how sometimes youth always get dismissed because they don't have experience or they haven't lived long enough. But they know who they are as a person at a very young age. They know what's best for them. And we have to give that space for them in a way that, that's age appropriate, developmentally as well. Like we have to take in consideration that they are still growing, but that doesn't mean that their thoughts, opinions, and ideas and concerns is not validated because they're too young. Like they're all of that stuff is just as valuable as another adult sitting at the table. So we have to shift the lens on, not making decisions for the youth, but allowing them to be in that decision making process. Like the adults can obviously still guide the youth in the right direction in whatever direction they want to go in. So I'm definitely not saying like go the opposite end and be like, oh yeah, youth, you got it, because they're still learning. But just having that balance of, youth driven but adult guided, or adult, like you call them adult supporters. Support the youth in their journey to becoming an adult. And just making sure that they're no matter what their backgrounds are, no matter what type of labels they have on them, they still have a valuable voice, and that needs to be recognized. And it's the same thing for if we're talking through a race equity lens. It's the same thing for people of color. You hear things about people like sometimes bringing people to the table, people of color to the table, just to have them at the table, or to make the environment diverse. Well, we need to go a step further with that. We can't just have people at the table just to have them at the table. We really have to ensure that it's valuable, and it's value in a way that's very authentic and is coming from a great place.
Thank you. Well said. So what is one thing that you hope people will take away from this particular conversation?
I hope that from this conversation, people will be inspired and motivated to have conversations in every space and at every chance that they get. I think as we continue to have these conversations, it will become normalized, and I guess it won't feel, I'm hoping that it doesn't feel confrontational anymore, because I feel like sometimes when we have conversations, it's like there's barriers that we have to go through. There's sometimes because of the uncomfortableness, people may put a wall up to protect themselves, so many different things. And I just hope that we can be in a space, or Allison said it best, which I always say now because it's awesome, brave space. You can still have a safe conversation, but brave space is being comfortable with being uncomfortable. So I think we have to learn from what's going on right now. We have to learn from experiences that is shared. And my hope is that with that movement, with that that foundational work, that we can really move towards action, meaningful and authentic action, that will help change the world. I'm feeling really hopeful about that. It just feels different this time that we're in. It's I don't really know how to describe it, but it just feels different. And to me, it feels optimistic and hopeful. So I really do hope for that change in So I'm hoping everyone just go and talk to your family and, you know, your friends about these critical things that we need to talk about, and do something with the information. Don't just say, oh, that was inspiring, or whatever you would say after that. Like, do something with it. Don't be afraid to do something with it. You know, we have to move towards actionable change. Like, we have to move towards a better future for us all. And so that's what I hope.
Thank you. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Again, Sophia Booker, foster care advocate. Thank you for joining us. Very powerful words. I do encourage everyone to attend right after this, the community chat on redefining the new normal, allies are all lies, tips on anti-racism, at 1 p.m. to learn more and more ways on how you can be intentional in being an ally. Well, thanks everyone again. Thank you, Sophia, for joining me. And I definitely hope that we can continue having these important conversations and continue having important takeaways from these conversations. Thank you.